Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first ever, I think, Board of Selectmen meeting at night. It's something we promised to do, and I figure we're trying to do one a month for the people who cannot come during the mornings, and I think it's going to work out well, and I thank my colleagues who were totally supportive of it. So thanks again for being here tonight, and let's please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A little off there. We'll have to fix that. We're a little bit better in the morning. A little more on cue there.
A little more, because you got more energy in the morning.
Maybe. The buck stops here, Ken. We have Selectwoman Rabin cannot make it tonight in person, but she is on the phone. She's at a work engagement on the West Coast, so she is listening, and if she has any questions, welcome. Lauren?
Hi, thank you.
Okay. First on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, the Board of Selectmen work session on February 10th, 2020. Is there a move to accept that?
Yes, I just, with two clarifications, both typographical. One is a typographical extra letter and on the February 10th minutes, and the other is to just clarify on the February 12th that we adopted the minutes that were as amended were approved. So subject to those edits, I move the minutes as amended.
Okay, I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
So 2-0. Actually, Lauren?
I'm gonna abstain since
Okay,
I was absent for both of those meetings with the flu.
but feeling better now. Okay, thank you. And then is there
Finally.
is there a motion to accept the minutes of the Board of Selectmen regular meeting on February 12th, 2020?
As amended, I move those minutes.
Okay, second. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. All righty, before I get to the first Selectmen's updates, this is an agenda that's been amended. I pulled the pay-as-you-throw discussion tonight. We're going to have more details in the coming days. When we were sworn in, we were presented with an issue, a problem, a waste disposal dilemma that we have to deal with. And there was three options, and one was to do nothing and raise taxes. Another was a tipping fee, which has been recommended for years. And another one was something that's done in 43 states and done very successfully. And it's the only one, in my estimation, that offers a personal control over the cost and also incentivizes people to recycle, which is called pay-as-you-throw or SMART. It's saving money and reducing trash. But as we talked about, in the last several months, we listen. And I spoke to a couple large groups in the last week. One was at St. Catherine's, a seniors group. And then I spoke to the RMA. It was a full house Wednesday. And lots of people came back when I talked about a 10-year vision, but I did touch upon some of these issues. And this was one of them. And I was encouraged that people, once they hear about it, they start to like it, and they were intrigued by it. But that being said, lots of these municipalities that we've been talking to have been telling us, where it's been very successful, that it takes a while. I think Stonington told us it took 8 or 10 months of public hearings and forums, because there's lots of questions. It's new, and there should be questions. And so I want to make sure that this is fully supported and enthusiastically by our community. And so I want to push this back and maybe have a start date maybe next year or the year after, however long it takes to get people comfortable with this. And so we're still going to continue to do my presentations and all around the town. But for now, I think if people are more familiar with the other option, then we'll be working on details of that in the coming days. But we are really enthusiastic. A lot of us are. not only about the unit-based pricing, but also our food scraps program, which is going to be a pilot program coming up starting in April, which should get a lot of trash out of the waste stream, and also a textile pilot program. So we're working on it, and I think Greenwich, which historically has done really well since 1991, and we're up to close to 40% recycling, but we want to get that up there even further, and so we'll keep working on it. But for now, that's why I pulled the agenda, so I know I see at least one person that was here for that tonight, so I will, I just wanted to get that out there so you didn't have to wait. All right, thank you. First Selectmen's updates. The Greenwich Plaza Committee that I impaneled will be meeting, they met last night in my office, but they're going to have their first full meeting on March 5th. I asked for 2 members from the BET. They sent me David Weisbrod from the Democratic side and Leslie Tarkenton from the Republican side. I asked for 2 members from the RTM, namely the head of the land use committees and finance. And that being said, that would be Mike Basham of the finance committee and Peter Berg of the land use committee. And then the office of the first selectman chose 2 people, and I selected Ross Moore and local attorney April Condon, who's well-versed in air rights issues. And so we're excited about that, and they will be advising the board going forward, but there's lots of questions there. Exciting times, but it's an issue that's complicated, but we think there's a solution at the end of the day. So we're eager to hear from them. Also, excuse me, I've impaneled a First Selectmen's Public Safety Committee that will look at everything, including pedestrian safety. We've had 4 vehicle-inspired deaths, traffic deaths in the last 2 years. So we will be announcing the 7 or so members of that in the coming days. And then in 2 weeks, we will be impaneling a committee that look at Nathaniel Witherall a little bit more and to come up with solutions there. And that one we're going to, and all of these are my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen are going to be weighing in on that. And I know Jill has some experience with the nursing home industry, so that would be very helpful. But we want to come to a model that works for everybody. And I don't know if Lauren, if you have any comments, just jump in. But these are things that are going to, I want them to be well represented. I want the community to be well represented, different points of view. It doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, or conservative, live on the east side or the west side. We want your input. And so they're going to be doing work, and they're going to be meeting regularly. So we are on all of that. We put out an RFP this week for the grand vision of the future, hopefully, waterfront district in Greenwich, and that starts with a redo of Roger Sherman Baldwin Park. So we put out an RFP. We hope to have, and thank you, Joe Siciliano and Alan Manelli for helping with that. We hope to have someone chosen by the end of the month, the next month, March, and then we're going to get going on that. I think what comes from that is going to make people really excited about what can be on our waterfront. One of our greatest assets is our waterfront. And, Roger Sherman Baldwin Park is heavily used, but for years we've talked about, the trucks being there and building garages that probably, as Joe Siciliano says, when they went up in 1950, they probably wouldn't be a second thought today. They would never go there, but they're there, and it's no one's fault. It's just the waterfront wasn't looked at as it is today. So we want to really fully use our assets to the best maximum use and highest and best use, and for our citizens to reclaim every inch of that waterfront that we can. So we promised to do that. We asked for it in our budget, and we put out an RFP this week. Next, we are going to have sent out an email today to Caroline Baisley, who's here. Thank you for all your updates. And to the police chief, the fire chief, the emergency operations director, the head of the human services, the head of GEMS, and the superintendent of the Board of Education to meet Monday to go over a contingency, to start a plan, a discussion on possible contingency plans for the coronavirus situation around the globe. The CDC just a few days ago said the risk remains here in the United States. It's still low. That's going to change. We heard this morning, was it, or yesterday morning, that there was a case in California, the origins of which was undisclosed. It's undetermined, which is a concern. And you've all seen what it's done to the markets the last 3 days. So we want to be prepared for it, and we want to stay ahead of it. So please God, it won't get to that point that it has in, Japan closing their schools for the next few weeks. But we want to have a plan. We want to have contingencies. So I appreciate our department heads for stepping up, and we will certainly be updating everybody on those discussions. And the last but not least is the unfortunate issue at the beach with the raccoons. It was found that lots of them were showing up dead, and that distemper was the reason for that. And that presents a danger not only to them, but also to every animal that's there. So we've closed the beach to the dogs. I would tell everybody, remind everybody, as we've done in the e-blasts each week, to keep your dogs on leashes. It is a town ordinance anyway, but I know sometimes people let them off when there's nobody around. I do. Hopefully the chief's not here. I have German Shepherds, and they never leave you. But you got to be very careful, because if they see a little animal, they may go after it, and it could have bad results. So please keep them on leashes. And we had an update tonight that the trapper is going to be there tonight again. It's sad, but they're dying, and it's a humane way to do it, but it's still sad. And if you're an animal lover, it gets to you, but it's something that we have to do. So I want to thank Joe and everybody who's stepped up there for the public health of our town. So I think that's it for me. And Lauren, did you have any updates?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Fred. So one of the committees that I've been assigned to is the age-friendly and dementia-friendly committee, and I'm chairing a communication subcommittee with Cameron, who is our webmaster for the town of Greenwich. And what we're going to be putting together is working with a bunch of different agencies, a portal on the town site for people that are looking for support for family members that are aging, or if you're, aging yourself. And one of the things that we're going to start with is a joint calendar, similar. I don't know if anyone in the audience is familiar with the Conservation Caboodle. It's a group that comes together from all different agencies, and they have kind of like a single portal on the web and a single calendar, so we're going to follow that approach. I've announced before, or updated before, that I'm working on the committee that's developing the KPIs, the key performance indicators or metrics for the POCD, Planning of Conservation and Development. We're regrouping on that. I don't know if Ben is in the audience. It's been challenging to come up with a set of indicators that we think really captures what we're trying to accomplish with the POCD that isn't so broad of like what might just be a municipal indicator in the town. So we're regrouping on that. I am in California, Northern California, where that patient has been diagnosed. I'm actually at a cybersecurity conference, so that's interesting in and of itself. And for what it's worth, I have been socializing pay-as-you-throw with folks in California, because they're way ahead of us with respect to recycling and composting. And it's been intriguing, so I look forward to bringing back feedback from another state that's a little ahead of us in terms of environmental aspects to the continued dialogue on pay-as-you-throw.
Thank you, Lauren. And we turn to Selectwoman Oberlander.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Camillo. It's so I've been spending the last week and a half or so mostly on constituent relations, hearing from many of you on the pay-as-you-throw ordinance and working on issues like ball fields access and things like that. Attending the budget meetings and meeting with members of boards and commissions, harbor management in particular, hoping to resolve some of their outstanding questions, particularly as you move forward with looking at Sherman Baldwin Park, the order of the names, to address some of the harbor management issues, meeting with the Boy Scouts. On the environmental side, the Sustainability and Enhancement Committee has continued to meet. They're a very active and in development committee, and the trash reduction aspect of the mandate of pay-as-you-throw is something that members are very interested in, and we will be continuing to look at how the town can implement programs that would enable us to reduce our trash production and be able to better educate the community about things that they can do as well, so that we're continuing to work on measures that will make it easier to look at how we reduce our trash. Oh, and as we continue to look at things, please reach out with your ideas and continue to send your thoughts so that we can be better informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any old business? Seeing none, before we go on to new business, I want to welcome Barbara Schellenberg, who's an attorney with Cohen and Wolf, and this is her first day here, I guess, right? It was a pleasure to meet you, and we were talking before, and there's a book in my office that the Selectwoman Oberlander stole from me and is now reading it. But we appreciate all you're going to do and all you've done. Didn't realize that you were an author until a few weeks ago. So welcome, and we look forward to working with you over the next few years.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify that Attorney Schellenberger is the author, along with Attorney Marino, of a book on administrative law in Connecticut. So she comes with a lot of background and experience. So thank you.
Okay, so we'll now go on to new business. First on the agenda is the approval of a gift from the Greenwich Point Conservancy and the Emily Catherine Fedorko Foundation for restoration of the Chimes Instrument Building in the Greenwich Point Chimes Building. And we have Parks and Rec Director Joe Siciliano. Hello, Joe.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to bring this application before you. I'm here tonight to seek approval for the $200,000 gift from the Greenwich Point Conservancy and the Emily Fedorko Foundation for the restoration of the Chimes Instrument at the Chimes Building at Greenwich Point. And before I give you a little description, and I'd like to introduce Pam and Joe Fedorko, who are here with us this evening, and Amy Hansen, who works for Parks and Recreation as a Marine Operations Supervisor. So they're here all to support the application in front of you. What we really need tonight is your approval to move forward as a gift to the RTM. It's been placed on this has been placed on the RTM call for the March meeting. It's been scheduled for several committee meetings next week, and then the following week it will be to the full RTM. This is the first phase of a completed gift at Greenwich Point. Greenwich Point Conservancy came to us a few years ago and said the next building we'd like to do a restoration would be the Chimes Building. There's been a bunch of conversations. There's been at least 2 sets of draft drawings that are still in draft and being refined as we speak. But this has a little bit more time-sensitive of an issue to it, in the sense that this work can be done at any time, either before or during the restoration, but it's getting in the queue for the vendor that we need to. There aren't many of these vendors that do this type of work in the United States or even the world. There's one here in Philadelphia that's very familiar with this whole mechanism and is very excited about doing the work. Joe Fedorko has met with them on site. We've talked about this. They've presented a proposal. And the proposal, I've gone through the proposal, and it definitely meets all of our requirements as a town, and it guarantees that the work will be done. One of the issues that's always come up is the finances, and I've been reassured by the Fedorkos and Chris Franco, who's not here this evening, that the money is guaranteed, that they can fund the $200,000 to move this section of the project forward now. It would be great to get this approved, and through the approval process of not only here, but the RTM, it gets us so we can go into the queue for this vendor and get the work done in subsequent months. This is an unusual building in the sense that the chimes are almost 100 years old. Next year, in 2021, they will be 100 years old. It'd be a great time to have them restored and to celebrate that, not only the chimes being restored, but in honor of Emily Fedorko. So we'd like to move this part of it forward, and in the future months, we'll be coming in front of the board to talk about the restoration of the balance of the building and the exterior of the tower. So that project will probably have a value of somewhere in the $1.2 million range, and we've had several great experiences with the Greenwich Point Conservancy in doing some renovation at Greenwich Point. They have the funding. We work collaboratively on getting it done, and we produce some really high-quality results for the town. So we're excited about doing this next phase of the project.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for your good work and always encouraging these types of endeavors, and to Chris Franco, who does a terrific job, and to Joe and Pam, thank you so much for all you do, both in honor of Emily and for everybody else in town to be aware of the issues of boating safety. You've done actually in the whole state, you've made a difference, and I applaud and salute you for all you've done, and thank you on behalf of everybody.
If you're interested, we have a few little photographs. Everybody kind of wonders what's in that tower. Well, this is what's in the tower. It's very interesting, and you can pass this, Fred and Jill and Barbara, you can all look at this, but it's a very interesting, very old, antiquated type of chimes and bells and mechanisms in this building. And it's really kind of interesting to see this and have it as ours, and to restore it both mechanically and digitally. So it'll have both facets of, it'll get a restoration as is, and then there'll be a digital overlay. So we'll be able to we'll program multiple types of music into the chimes building.
That looks beautiful.
Nobody would ever realize that's there. So I'll leave this way so the audience can kind of see. But it is really a great opportunity to do this.
Joe, if the public wanted to take a look at that, would they, when it's all done, would they be able to, or is that something that's?
What we're doing is, because this is up some narrow staircase in a very, very tight space. I mean, Amy and I were up there about 2 or 3 weeks back, or actually 2 or 3 months ago, and it's really kind of tight. What we're doing is as the restoration is progressing, the Greenwich Point Conservancy and the Fedorkos have put together an opportunity to have it videotape, the whole process of the restoration of the chimes, the current condition, moving forward, when the chimes are come back from being restored, replacement, and that will be available. And our goal is that when we get to the rest of the building, in this little doorway here, where we currently have the dockmaster's office, is to put a boating safety office in here for safety. And we're going to have a screen in there that'll play a continuous loop video of how the chimes were restored. It'll have some narrative to it. It'll be quite exciting, because trying to get a bunch of people up here, it was pretty difficult for us to get up there, but it can get done. But the public access would be difficult, but why not bring it to the public then? So that was our goal, to have it videoed, and there'll be a restoration tape available. And we play it here. We can play it anywhere else we want, on the town website or Channel 79 or that kind of thing. So
that'd be terrific.
Okay.
Thank you.
All
Great
right.
idea.
Great.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Siciliano. And thank you to the Fedorkos and your family and your foundation for this incredible gift. And I hope the description is on the website, Barbara, because reading the description of the project was a highlight, actually, of my day. I think I wrote you that you can hear the bells ringing when you're reading the description. I do encourage everyone to try to read it. I did have one question that we talked about over email that was referred to me by someone who had read the agenda. In terms of, and you had indicated you were going to talk about the naming, your naming program at the meeting, and what's being done for this gift, but also what's down the road, and to talk about whether we have a policy town-wide on naming rights, because I know that there's a lot of things under discussion.
Well, interesting part about this is that for the many years that we've been naming things, Fred has been spearheaded one of the most important ones, which was the Griffith E. Harris Golf Course. When it was a Bruce Memorial Golf Course, he did most of the research on how the naming process goes. It's kind of two ways that it works, and one, if we're naming a building or a structure after someone, such as the Benheim Western Greenwich Civic Center, there was a large donation given by Bob Benheim, and he was interested in getting his name on the building. That naming opportunity went along with the gift to the RTM. And so realistically, we want the Board of Selectmen to be part of the process, or should be part of the process, to acknowledge and encourage this. But it goes to the RTM as far as the process for the gift and the renaming of the naming or renaming of the facility or building. If we're doing something as simple like as a room or a lobby, we have the Sue Baker Pavilion. Let's use that as an example. It's the old barn. That's the name of it. It was for a long time. It was the first concession. That's what everybody called it. Chris kind of renamed it the old barn, doing some research, and then second, a part of that was named the Baker Pavilion. Those types of namings really have not gone to the RTM because it's not an entire structure. We're not going to the Susan Baker building or the Susan Baker. It's a part of the pavilion. It's a part of the what's there as a structure. We have the Livy Florin, education, Seaside Education Center in the cottage building. They're not. It's just an honorary name that's given to a portion or a section of the building for a donation, but we're not calling it the Florin Cottage. So the larger naming opportunities definitely go to the RTM for name changes or name appropriate, and that's pretty much the way it's worked for many years. Fred researched the one for the Griff Harris Golf Course because that was a little tricky. It was part of the Bruce family. And we had to get them there was a written agreement about that, and then they had to get them to relinquish that so that we could go forward with the Harris Golf Course, which they did, and we've renamed it, and it went to the RTM. So that was a very simple, it was a little bit tricky, but we were able to get that done. I don't know of any written policy, but this is a procedure, as long as I've been here for 38 years, we've followed, and probably before I was here, but obviously it does have some rhyme or reason and does make some sense of how we kind of allocate naming and donations, et cetera.
So thank you for the explanation. I do appreciate it, and the history. I think particularly with the First Selectmen's focus on public-private partnerships and initiatives, it does behoove the town to develop a protocol for our naming, to document, how it is that we'll make decisions. I understand if they go to RTM, that's great. They can vote. The moderator and is here and as well, so they can, but I would encourage it. It certainly will not hold up my vote on this item, but it's always better to have something that's open and transparent for the public, and if we have something in writing, then we can very easily answer any questions that come up.
Right. There is a gift procedure that I went through the archives between end of work and tonight's meeting that dates back into the 80s. There was a letter issued by the law department, an opinion about gifts. It was 1996, with John Merrigan, and there's a strict procedure on how gifts are accepted. Interesting enough, and it is what it is. I mean, I read it. The Board of Selectmen is not mentioned in the gift procedure at all, but I would think that we'd be remiss not to bring it to the Board of Selectmen. The RTM and the BET are definitely mentioned, the procedure, how to do things. But maybe there's a time, maybe that needs another look, because I can't remember in my tenure as director not coming in front of the Board of Selectmen for a gift approval and support. I mean, we wanted to work its way through the process with the RTM. So without, why would we omit the Board of Selectmen? But there's no mention of that in this document, and unfortunately, maybe it's time for another look. I don't know.
I think there's no harm. I think there's no harm in getting something on the books. I mean, this one to me is a slam dunk. But if there's a question of somebody, we've heard this before, who may want to come with some money to fix up a facility, but they may throw a condition on it. And so if there's a condition ever that's abridges a right that's already there for the public in a public building, obviously we wouldn't go for that. So maybe that's something we could put in writing. If somebody gives us a brand new building that we didn't have in our inventory and said, we want the town to use this, but on weekends we want it reserved for this, this private team or league, that would be different, obviously, because that's something we don't have in our inventory, and it's something that's just a gift and an addition of 5 days. But something that's already on the books, that's a town facility, obviously, I don't think anybody would ever vote for something like that, but there's no harm, I think, in getting something on the books there. And we could revisit.
Take another look,
We
but-
could revisit Attorney Meerbergen's.
I'm just the mechanics of getting them through the process, but if you're going to put something together and you want me to be part of that, I'd be happy to
Love to.
participate.
Thank you.
Okay.
We appreciate that, Joe. Thank you. We'll circle back this week.
Okay, so.
So
I
I'm
think-
going to move the acceptance with gratitude of the gift from the Emily Catherine Fedorko Foundation for the restoration of the historic chimes instrument in an amount not to exceed $200,000.
And I will second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, 3-0.
I wanted to add my thanks as well, not only for the generous gift, but for what is being done for the community. So thank you.
Thank you. And again, from the bottom of our heart, thank you, Pam and Joe. We really, really appreciate it. And Joe, thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, moving right along to the coronavirus update. Our Health Director, Caroline Baisley's here. Good evening, Caroline.
Good evening. It's evening already.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your
You're having
invitation.
long and busy days.
Very busy. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview, and then I'll be able to answer your questions, because I don't know what the level of all this boils down to, because there's an awful lot going on, and it's changing all of the time, and trying to keep up with the demands of what the state and federal government wants of us. So, but the new novel 2019 novel coronavirus outbreak the new name is called COVID, COVID-19. And that was a new name that was come up with by the World Health Association, WHO. And so they often enough, they do name these bacterial outbreaks and these virus outbreaks, they give them the name. How the name comes about is probably not important. But nevertheless, it did occur. WHO, the World Health Organization, did take notice that something was happening in China in December of 2019. And it looked like this newly respiratory virus emerged from Hunan province, which is Hunan city actually in Hubei province in China. And it came out of a open market, seafood, animals, live dead animals, and it was an unknown origin respiratory virus. And this was immediately a concern for world health leaders, because these are the things that give rise to pandemics and goes worldwide. And as you see, at this point in time, there's about 38 or 37 countries that has been affected by this virus, which includes the United States. But most of the deaths and most of the cases that we have are coming right out of central China. So nevertheless, we think it was originally emerged from an animal source, and coronavirus is a very large family of viruses, and they can affect humans, but rarely they do. We do or did have at least 6 human viruses, coronaviruses, and up until this point, and now the new COVID virus is the 7th. 4 of the original or existing viruses are very mild. They're human viruses. And the other 2 were very severe. And you may take note of the word SARS or MERS. They came out of, MERS came out of Saudi Arabia and SARS came out of China. So they're very much aware, those folks in China, of how these viruses occur and how they circulate and what kind of illness they cause. And those 2 viruses cause very severe illness. In fact, the MERS virus, 3 out of 4 people succumb to death. So this particular virus that we have going here, we don't know what the severity will be, because as it enters into a different population, it will circulate in a different manner. And so the judge is out on that one. We don't really know how it will actually circulate as it starts to progress here in the United States. As we know, the CDC yesterday has said for us to take note and start to prepare for the circulation in the upcoming weeks and the upcoming months to come. The 15th case, as you mentioned earlier, I'll go to that right now. There was a case that this CDC is perplexed about. It is a 15th case coming out of California. That's where most of the U.S. cases are actually. And this particular case was not associated with any kind of travel history to China, nor was it close contact with someone who has the virus, like a husband or a wife. In fact, they don't know what the origin is. So they're investigating that very closely, because right now they can't pinpoint it. But they are accepting it as a 15th case. If they can't find a cause, this will most likely be the start of the circulation in the communities of the United States, which we do not have at this moment. So that means it will start out and then it'll progress from there. But right now, we don't know. We don't know that. So the word pandemic is kind of scary, because it kind of tells you that it's something that's severe, and it is. And you'll hear that word in the upcoming weeks and months to come, that we have a pandemic. The last time you heard that was in 2009, when we had the pandemic influenza outbreak of 2009. And it was a very mild influenza outbreak, but certainly it did kind of whip through the United States very much so, and didn't really cause that much death. Only what influenzas do, viruses, they do cause great illness, and they sometimes people die from, obviously, influenza viruses because of their underlying medical conditions and so on and so forth. The symptoms of the COVID virus is similar to what the influenza virus is. There's fever, cough, shortness of breath is probably the unique one, a symptom. Sometimes you get a sore throat, and sometimes there are other symptoms, and they vary. It can be very mild, like a common cold, or they can be very severe and cause deep distress in the respiratory system, and also cause pneumonia, and then finally death. So we have a gamut of severity, and again, severity is right now being looked at, because they don't know, because we're not circulating this virus throughout the communities of the United States at this time. So they really don't know how well or how not well we will do as a community as it circulates. So, as I said before, there's 37 countries that include the United States where this particular virus is. There's over 80,000 cases in total, which includes China. 26,000 deaths, 2,600 deaths, mostly in China. And that is in the area of the Hunan city, Hubei province. Then out of the 2,600, maybe there's, the numbers are changing all day, but maybe 1,100 throughout the 36 or 38 countries. Here in the United States, we have, the breakdown is we have 14 confirmed cases, possibly 15. We have 42 cases of Americans out of the 1,300 people on board of the Diamond Princess cruise, which is docked on the Japan waters. We have 3 cases that were taken directly out of Yunnan, China, diplomatic, I believe, families and so on and so forth. And then that 14, all of which, except for 2, and not counting the 15th one, were associated with the traveling to China, except this 15th one, which is unknown at this point. 2 of those cases were partner relationships, a husband or a wife, closely quartered, and they came down with the virus. So right now, you see it very, very tightly quartered, and the way it's circulating, and it has a lot to do with, and I think they set unprecedented measures in China and the United States. The local health authorities in China, including the United States, federal, state, and local, have put containment measures together where they have contained this virus so tightly that it hasn't really moved that much, considering you have about 1.5 billion people in China and 400 million people here in the U.S., and you only have 14 confirmed cases. In total, with the cruise ship, it's about 59. That's not much. I mean, when you have 400 million people. So, but if it starts to take off, of course, then you'll see community-wide spread, circulation of the virus, and then you go from what the CDC spoke about, you go from containment to mitigation. And that's where the planning piece comes in, because mitigation is to more or less defray the severity of the disease as it starts to take off in the community, and the measures that you put in place in order to slow it down. Like, for example, in 2009, I had to put some measures in place. In other words, no movie theaters, nothing that really allows congregation of people. And it all depends on the severity of the disease. The more you confine, the less you allow it to circulate. It's only done when you have to do it, but when you have to do it, it's short term, hopefully, and then your cases will start to drop. But these measures do have to put in place, and through the general statutes, the authority is given to me, so I don't take that authority lightly, but I don't want anyone to lose their life when it can be saved.
Sure. To put it in perspective, I think the SARS period, I think, was around 17 years ago, and
2012.
2012. Oh, no, 2002, 2003, I think. It was about 17 years ago.
Yes? Right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of numbers in my
Just
head.
to put it in perspective, how long did that last, and is it comparable at this stage?
We didn't have a lot of cases. From what we see now is that SARS wasn't in as many countries as this virus is. These coronaviruses seem to transmit in the same fashion. In fact, right now, this one transmits similar to the influenza virus, where, close proximity the use of utensils kind of a thing, respiratory droplets, and so on and so forth. It's some diseases are extremely explosive, like the measles. All you have to do is be in the same structure, and you could obviously come down with that disease. This is not one of them. So again, the jury's still out in terms of how it will progress. Again, we're a different kind of population than the China population is, and so on and so forth. They predict that we could have as higher a fatality rate as they see in China. But that depends on the health of the individual. Viruses do react and do cause a lot more damage in people who can't handle them. The immune system, the other kind of medical issues that they have. So it's hard to predict right now. We'll know more in the future as time goes on what we're dealing with. Are we dealing with something as mild as the 2009 virus? Influenza virus, which is a different kind of virus, or are we dealing with something like MERS or SARS? It's a consistency, the way it's acting is very much like MERS and SARS, but we don't know what the fatality rate, if it's going to be that bad, and the severity of the disease.
Okay, thank you. Just last question. As we go forward, as I mentioned, we're going to be meeting on Monday and routinely and regularly on this. You will be, just let us know, people are asking already about the masks, and we see some price gouging already and things going on. But these are all questions that, I'm traveling to New Orleans, so what should I be careful in an airport? Any public space where there's people, coming from different venues, very diverse venues. Anything that you can put out there, we will share with the people in Greenwich. This way,
well, the CDC is recommending, obviously, the people who are actually walking around and about, they don't have to wear masks. It's the people who are sick that wear masks. We are encouraging people, and up on our website, we're trying to keep up with all the information from the CDC, but travel advisories is very important if you're going somewhere. There's lots of travel advisories from many countries. We are encouraging, in China, if you don't have to go, don't. That's how, they don't tell you you can't go. What they are telling you, if you go, you may not come back, or you may be put into quarantine. You know that the measures that we're putting in place now is that if you're coming from mainland China and in where the Hunan city is, you being diverted to 11 international airports, and you're being screened by the CDC. Even if you're coming from mainland China and not that area. So there's three things going on at once. As you're coming into these airports, the CDC is actually giving you an medical evaluation. So if you're from the area of where the outbreak occurred, if you're sick, you're not going on to your final destination, you're going to a medical facility. If you're asymptomatic and you're coming from the hub of where the outbreak occurred, you're going into a 14-day quarantine facility. You're not going on to your final destination. If you're coming from the outskirts of China and the other areas, the same issues apply. You come into one of the 11 international airports. If you are well, you will meet your final destination, but you will be referred to the state health department and then to the local health director for monitoring for 14 days. If you're ill, you then will go on to your final destination after they evaluate you and get medical assistance. But that will all change. We will continue to do monitoring. That's the containment piece. And then we take on the mitigation piece. It all depends how overwhelmed we will get. Sometimes with these things, it can be so overwhelming that your hospital is up to here and then some, and then it would be my responsibility to find and to plan for, which I've already have done, to have an alternate care facility. for those who are ill. So all these plans have already been put in place. That's what we've been doing since 2003. And with the help of the Medical Reserve Corps, which the Department of Health manages for the town, we have an outstanding number of medical personnel, doctors, nurse practitioners, nurses, all levels of, of medical personnel who have signed on to actually help the town during a case of this. And we meet every, they participate with us in drills, and we meet with them every June. And it's very refreshing to see how many people are committed to this town. I can't begin to tell you. And it really makes me feel very confident that we could handle something, not overwhelming, but handle something out of the ordinary with help, because we're going to need the help. The hospital does the hospital. They have to care for patients. They don't come into the community. That's our job. So I changed my plans. I will be there at 4, if you'd like. I tried to change around my schedule, but I want to thank you for the opportunity, and we'll keep everybody informed.
Thank you. It's very much appreciated. Thank you, Caroline.
So Director Blazey, I just have a couple more questions. Thank you so much for that comprehensive background information. I think people are particularly interested in what Greenwich is doing to prepare, not just the working group that the First Selectman is putting together. So maybe, I know that people are going to travel abroad, they'll check the CDC warnings, but locally in Greenwich, have you, my understanding is that the people that are most seriously impacted are those of older ages, less healthy. Have you been working with the Commission on Aging and Nathaniel Witherall and some of the other not-for-profits to help them start to think about how to prepare for the spread of the virus?
Yes. Well, we've started preparing not only with the elderly, but also the population of special needs. The Public Health Emergency Coordinator's position has worked very closely now and in the past to work with the caretakers that care for many of our elderly population in their homes. I also have my nurses who also do, home visits, and they take care of their segment of the population as well. And what we've achieved over the years is that, a lot of times, even when we have storms, maybe they have children that are not in Greenwich. They're living in other, states or even, upstate. And so we've been working with them to try to prepare and to get the person who they're caring for to come up with a plan. A personal plan is very important for everyone, even these folks. And so we're working hand in hand with Lori and her organization and, the group. We're part of that group. One of my nurses do sit on that network. And so,
And you're doing that now with regard to this virus?
We started, I don't know how many years ago, but we continue to do it. So it's the same measure. All these viruses are the same measure. You look at the CDC information and it says, what can you do now in preparation for this virus? And it's wash your hands. They kind of drill that into you. Wash your hands. Keep your hands away from your nose, your mouth, and your eyes. Stay away from people who are sick. Stay home when you're sick. Those are the things that you need to do. And of course, then, because of the potential of our infrastructure being compromised in some way, you want to think about preparing for, extra food in the house and extra water. So we have brochures and information up on our website that gives people an idea of what they should be looking at. You don't have to go out and do it all now, but you need to think about it now. It's almost like a storm. So we've been.
So you are doing that. I think the question is, have you started working with these groups about this specific virus to start to prepare them? The Medical Reserve Corps, have you done the outreach to them to let them know that?
That's been done already. We will. you know, we will probably, we participate in a lot of the drills, and they're invited also to attend. A lot of those folks work, obviously, as doctors and dentists and veterinarians and so on and so forth, but they are kept apprised of everything that we do, because they know that in a situation like this, they know there's more than a likelihood that they will be serving us. And so they're very committed individuals. I can't, again, you're very blessed to have these people as part of your town.
And so residents who have questions on how your plans and protocol, should they be reaching out directly to your office?
Well, we're setting up a phone line, because
Okay.
now that the CDC has announced this readiness, there has been, you know, the heightened awareness has
Yes.
really been heightened now. So we're going to set up a phone line where people can call in and ask specific questions, but we do direct them to our website that has connections to the state website, to the governor's website, to the CDC website, which gives them all the answers, but if they have a specific question, we want to be there to answer for them. So that just takes we're all ready to go on that, and I was just waiting for the CDC to go to the next step. So sometimes next week, we'll be announcing that number to the public, where they can actually call in, and one of my staff will rotate to answer some questions.
And other, the large housing, the housing authority, you're working with them as well, and other, the large landlords?
They're all big groups. We're only 22 of us, but we're doing our best. We do that. We've been doing that all along for emergency preparedness. So it all falls into the same kind of work of being prepared for, you know, the worst and hoping for the best. And it's personal preparation. The thing that really gets the whole community away from their personal preparedness is when it hits and the actual infrastructure, meaning the hospital and our town agencies and the illnesses, and that comes into play, where your continuity plan will then start to kick in and say, how are we going to handle this? You know, are we going to be able to work from home? Are we going to be able to, you know, reduce the amount of, or increase the amount of sick days, or whatever it takes in order to keep functional? So we're gearing up to do a little bit more than usual, but, you know, when you start early on these things, people start to get frightened. You know, a panic kind of sits in, and the worst thing you want to do is panic your public, because you need your public to listen to you when you speak and tell them what to do when you need to do it. So you have to be very careful of that, because otherwise, when you do talk to them and you want them to do something, they're flipped out and they don't hear what you have to say. So we already built that in, and so we're moving, I think, in a pretty good clip. So I think we need all the help we can get.
Thank you for answering our questions.
Thank you, Caroline. And Lauren, did you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you for the very comprehensive update. And Fred, I'm sure that as you send out your weekly community connections, you know, you could even reiterate if, you know, you're reaching a different audience than the health department does. I do know, I being in California right now, everyone's talking about it, and it's true that the masks aren't for the healthy people, they're for the sick people. So it's quite interesting. We should reiterate that too.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Lauren.
And if anybody has a question for Caroline, I know some hands went up. She'll be here for a few minutes, or you can reach out to her tomorrow, but I know she's very, very busy, but she'll be here if you want to. Oh, if it's,
Could I just,
sure.
Jess?
I know you are, but yet for the record.
Well, okay. Not on the record, just an additional thought, because we've started to deal with this ourselves, because we run a business that hosts a lot of international travelers. So we're already setting up, because they're all housed in the same environment. It's about protecting our staff, but also protecting whatever guests we have. So just like a cruise ship, properties like the Hyatt or the Delabar, they all have big international clientele, and they're coming from New York airports, where, yes, they're being screened, but I think there should be heightened awareness about that.
Thank you. For the record, you have to state your name. I know. I can't say it.
Sorry, Doreen Pearson.
Thanks, Doreen. Thank you so much. Okay, Caroline, again, thank you very much for the update. That was very helpful. Okay, next on the agenda is the appointment of the Historic District Commission as the study committee for the historic property designation of 408 North Street. Ann Young. Hi, Ann.
Hi.
How are you?
Fine. Can you hear me? Great.
Yeah, good to see you.
My name is Ann Young. I am the staff for the Historic District Commission, as well as a co-founder of the Historic Properties of Greenwich. And just to give you some background as to why we're here today, about 9 months ago, we sent out a mailing, the co-founders and myself, and instructing people that, there was an opportunity that if they were concerned about protecting their historic structure, that we would love to help them do that. I think we can all say that we have seen probably too many of our historic structures become demolished, and there is an avenue for people to take if they're looking to protect it. And we were very happy when we got several responses, and one of them turned into a very long discussion. And 9 months later, this is where we are. So unfortunately, the owner could not be here tonight. He's not feeling well. But we are still here in order to receive both your nomination and approval for the Historic District Commission to become the study committee. At HDC's last meeting, there was a unanimous vote to go forward with this. And, this is a very interesting opportunity because we're going to be coming here tonight to get your approval, but then we also come back to you with the actual report to have you review it, to make comments, and then if there are no comments, it gets approved, or if there are, then we go back and revise it. And there are also numerous other public opportunities for participation. Meetings like tonight, meetings in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, land use. There's even a separate public meeting for the public to come in and give their opinions if they do have it. For those of you, all three, I think Barbara may have some background in this. It is a new thing for you, but it's certainly something that has been done very easily with the past 4 local historic properties, and then of course the 3 districts. And probably the best known one is the Greenwich Historical Society Bush Holly. So with that, what I'd like to do is introduce to you Stephen Bishop, who is the chair of the Historic District Commission, and both he and I would love to take your questions, but I'd like to have him say a few words.
Sure. Good evening. Good evening, Stephen. How are you?
Stephen Bishop, and I'm chairman of the Historic District Commission. We've been through this. I've been through this with a couple properties in Greenwich, but there are not many, unfortunately. I wish there were a lot more. So when we get someone with a great property, a great historic property that wants to go through this and really put this on their property because it lasts forever, it's a great thing. And I'm hope that we can get this through as easily as possible, but it's a long process. It finally ends up with a vote before the RTM. This is a fantastic property, and I hope that you will appoint the HDC as the study committee.
Thank you. And I've been in this house. It's a beautiful house. And just to, the study committee, when they do their work, just for the public's edification, if we designate it as a historic property, does that save it from a wrecking ball? Does it save it from significantly being altered?
Absolutely. It is the highest protection you can get.
As
higher
opposed
than
to
the
being-
National Register, higher than the State Register.
As opposed to the
Being in a
placking?
local historic,
Yes.
placking, it's
Yes.
above all of that. Being a local historic district or a local property, which are basically the same thing, except one is a district and a property is just an individual property, but after that, it's all the same. If you want to change something on the exterior, you have to come back to the HDC and get a certificate of appropriateness.
So that is the big difference, because I know when lots of these houses in Greenwich, we be plaqued over the years, everybody says, oh, they can't touch it, and the next thing you know, it's down, and people say, but they couldn't touch it, they broke the law.
I wish that was the case.
Right.
I wish that was the case,
I
but
just
it's
wanted the
not.
clarification.
But this is real, has real teeth, and,
Thank you.
yeah.
So I want to thank you for the great description in our packet, because it is a new first impression for me at least, and I appreciate the very quick response to my questions. Just for the audience and the public, my questions revolved around the process for the study committee, which I was told is the Historic District Commission, and so I just think for the public who's concerned about this, if you could just make it easy to find the members of your commission on the website, that would be great, in case anyone does have a question.
Well, yes, they are on the
And-
website, yes.
Yeah, and then also to just confirm that the owner also, because there is a process, I guess, where you could go through it and the owner doesn't necessarily initiate the process and has opportunity to comment. So at least from the description, so just to confirm that you had relayed that the owner was part of the process, is in favor of it and supports it, and just to
With an
clarify.
individual historic property, the owner's got to be on board. If the owner's not on board, forget it. It's not going to happen. With the district, it's slightly different. You can actually put in a district with 2/3 of the people in the district, but an individual property, if the owner's not on board with the whole thing, forget it. It can't happen. But unfortunately, I'm sorry he's not here tonight, but he's under the weather, and, I guess these days, none of us wants to go out when we're maybe not feeling
Get well, Reverge, if you're watching.
Yeah.
Did you have any more questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for the questions, Joe. Lauren, did you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I appreciate your presentation. That was very good, and I move that we appoint the Historic District Commission as the study committee for designation of historic property designation for 408 North Street in Greenwich.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we got it. I think I heard her. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, that almost wraps it up. Before we go into executive session, I do want to salute and present a proclamation to somebody who's here at his last Board of Selectmen meeting in his role as a town attorney, Gene McLaughlin. Gene, you've been in this role for about 39 years?
39 and 2/3.
39, well, round it up to 40. Nice, even number. We want to thank you for all your years of service to the town. I remember you many years ago. To see that smile on his face, he's always had that smile, and he's always been accessible to people. And we appreciate your work here, and wish you nothing but the best of health and success in your new endeavors.
All right, thank you. It means a lot to me.
And this is for you. Okay, with that, I move that we go into executive session.
Second that.
Okay, thank you all for coming tonight. I've made mistakes, and that's why I would never get it
I'm
right.
going to make a motion to come out of executive session.
Second? Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And back in the regular meeting, and seeing that there's no more business, is there a motion to adjourn?
No, we have to vote on
Oh,
the settlement.
we do have to vote on the settlement, yes. Okay, is there a motion to accept the settlement as presented by Attorney McLaughlin?
And that would be for TCS Realty LLC versus the Town of Greenwich for a tax credit of approximately $17,183 against future tax payments If the plaintiff were to have prevailed at trial, they would have been entitled to a cash refund of approximately $39,726 plus interest and costs.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion.
And there has been a request to clarify that the February 10th, 2020 minutes, that the S was intended, not as a typo, so the approval will be of the minutes as presented, not, unless there's an objection.
No objection. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, second, all those in favor? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.